Okay. So what is exception handling means? Exception handling is a mechanism to handle the runtime errors so that your program execution will be continued till the end without any interruptions. That's the exception handling. So why you will get interruptions? There are many reasons. So we'll come to know one by one. But what is an exception? So exception means what? So exception is unwanted or unexpected event, so which occurs during the execution of your code. So while running the code, you will get these exceptions. Suddenly you will get a exception. But you are not expecting that, but you will get it. And you need to handle that runtime exceptions. That's what exception. Then what is error? So error is the mistake in the code done by the development team. Okay. So then it is not recoverable, right? You cannot handle the errors, but exceptions you can handle that. Exceptions you can handle them. So that's the difference between error and exception. So when error exceptions will occur, when you give invalid input data. So when the existing file, so you're trying to open it, which is not available in the system. And network connection issues, bad input data provided by the user. All this will cause the exceptions. So the hierarchy of exception classes are, this is the one. Basically, exceptions are available in java.lang package. And the root class you already know, that's a object class. And we already know java.lang package, which is available in so the throwable class. And also you have object class. And object is the superclass for all the Java classes. And so here if you observe, the throwable is the root exception class that is subdivided into exception and error. So exception again, so two types. There are two types of exceptions. One is checked, unchecked exceptions. Checked exceptions is a one category. Second one, unchecked exceptions is the another category. So that's the two types. But what is checked exceptions? What is unchecked exceptions? Checked exceptions are going to occur at compile time. So when checked exceptions occurs, at compile time only they will occur. So while writing the code itself, you will get the checked exceptions. So some of the examples of checked exceptions is IO exception, SQL exception, class not found exception. These are all called checked exception examples. And then we have an unchecked exception. But first you should know checked exceptions definition. The classes which are extended to throwable class is known as a checked exceptions. And unchecked exceptions are runtime exceptions. That means they will occur only at runtime. They won't occur at compile time. So what are the runtime exceptions? We have arithmetic exception, null pointer exception, number format exception, index out of bounds exception. Index out of bounds exception. These are the unchecked exceptions. So these occurs at runtime only. These occurs at runtime only. So we should know first, make sure you understand when each exception occurs. If you know, you can fix the code issue. So even the exception occurs at runtime, you can fix it easily if you know that. Okay. So what is error? Error is, it's a mistake in the code. So that can be, that cannot be recoverable because easily you cannot recover it. You cannot handle it, basically. You cannot handle it. But there are different errors. Stack overflow error, virtual machine error, out of memory error. These are some of the assertion error, right? So something you have written a wrong code, then you will get error. Exception is an expected event, unexpected event. Suddenly it will occur. Maybe because of wrong input data you provided, and that file is not exist, and so you are trying to open that, and also you have a so network connection issues. So such kind of issues so will cause these exceptions. But let's see, understand when you will get these exceptions. Let's understand runtime exceptions. Mainly we need a runtime exceptions, right? We understand. Before going that, I'll give you one more definitions here. Please see that. There are two types of exceptions. One is checked exceptions, unchecked exceptions. Checked exceptions means the classes which directly inherit the throwable class, except a runtime exception and error is known as a checked exceptions, like IO exception, SQL exception, and so these are all checked exceptions which occurs at compile time only. Unchecked exceptions, the classes which inherit a runtime exception. So that means this one. These are the classes, right? These classes which inherit runtime exception class. The parent of these classes is runtime exception. This parent is exception. Exception parent is throwable. Throwable parent is object class. So that basically here the root class, root exception class is throwable class. Okay. So remember this hierarchy and that will help you. And so unchecked exceptions occurs at only at runtime. Then what are the different runtime exceptions or unchecked exceptions? Arithmetic exception, null pointer exception, number format exception, array index out of bounds exception, string index out of bounds exception. These are the unchecked exceptions or runtime exceptions. So that means they will occur at only at runtime. That means when you run the program, then only these exceptions will occur. If you're not running, and you won't get them compile time. Well, that means while writing the code, you won't get. It won't throw any error. So that only writing time, you will get a checked exceptions. SQL exception and file not found exception. Then you will get a IO exception. So these are all checked exception examples. So let's understand when you will get each exception. So what are the scenarios? You will see this runtime exceptions. So one is arithmetic exception. The reason for arithmetic exception is so if you divide any number by 0, if you divide any number by 0, you will get arithmetic exception. So if you divide any number by 0, so there is a chance of occurring arithmetic exception. So what is the reason for arithmetic exception? If you divide any number by 0, you will get a arithmetic exception. Why I will do no dividing by 0? Maybe you are not directly doing. So you are using some variables, and that for example A and B, two variables you are taking. A by B you are doing. By suppose you should get the B value, but B value you are getting a 0. And so A value you have a proper number. That number you are dividing with a 0, then you will get a arithmetic exception. So you have to make sure the reasons you should know, then you easily can solve. Next, second one, null pointer exception. So null pointer exception means if we have a null value in any variable, so then if you perform the action on that null variable, then system will throw null pointer exception. That is also called NPE, null pointer exception. See here, if you observe here, string s equal to null. And you are calling on this reference variable, you are calling the methods. This will cause the null pointer exception. Remember, your variable value is null, and you are using that reference variable to call the methods. Then it will throw null pointer exception. So that's the null pointer exception when you will get it. And another one is number format exception. So there is a number format exception when you will get a number format exception. So what is mean by a number format exception? So number format exception means number format exception means if you are doing a wrong formatting of any value, which occurs a number format exception. Suppose you have a string variable that has characters. You are trying to convert them into integer. So that will throw number format exception. See here, string s equal to ABC. Now you are trying to convert this string object into primitive integer format. This is not possible. But what is the formula to convert the string into primitive format? So, for example, integer format if you want to convert. So, int I equal to integer class dot parse int method, and you pass the string object. Now, why you will get this line is number format exception is alphabets, you cannot convert them into integer. If there are numbers here, then you can convert them into primitive format. So that is this number format exception concept. Okay. So array index out of bounds exception. Array index out of bounds exception. So when you will get array index out of bounds exception. So I already mentioned in the arrays topic. If you're inserting a wrong value at wrong index, then you will get a array index out of bounds exception. Okay. So that's the main reasons. If you know that, then it's easy to handle the exceptions. Then how can you handle these exceptions? Okay, you know now the reason you know. Then how can you handle? Okay. So let's see, to handle the exceptions, we're going to use a try, catch, finally, throw, and throws keywords. These are the 5 keywords you're going to use. So what are the 5 keywords to handle the exceptions? Try, catch, finally, throw, and throws. These are the 5 keywords you will use. So let's understand first Java try block. So what is try? Try, catch. So Java try block is used to enclose the code where that exception is arising. So which line of code is throwing an exception to you? You know that. The reasons we have seen, right, already. Such kind of code you are writing, enclose that in the try block. So this try catch blocks you will use in the method inside only, method body inside only. If an exception occurs at that particular statement of try block, the rest of the block code will not execute. So it is recommended not to keep the code in the try block that is not throwing an exception. So you should not use, so which is not throwing an exception. Only which line is throwing an exception, only that line you can keep it. That line you can keep it. So the syntax is, here it is, try. So the curly bracket starts and ends. Only the line which is throwing an exception that you enclose in the try block. Which line is throwing an exception, only that line you can keep it in the try block. Then immediately catch block. So try after immediately must be followed by a catch block. So that means if any exception occurs in the try block, this catch block will catch that error and it will throw for you in the catch block. So you have to, sorry. So you have to write catch after exception type and the reference variable you have to write. Then below you write this exception dot print stack trace method you need to call. That means it will print all the error stack trace, exception stack trace. That's a print stack trace method, what it is going to do. And exception reference variable, this e dot, there are a lot of methods, get message, get cause, you will get all of them. That's a catch block. So try catch. Okay, try this code. If successful, CatchBlock won't execute. If not successful, then CatchBlock will execute. Please understand this. When the CatchBlock will execute, if there is any exception in the try block, then CatchBlock will execute. So this CatchBlock will catch that error and executes the CatchBlock code. That's a try catch. So syntax of try finally also there. Try finally block. So finally block also you can write after try block. First, without try block, you cannot write alone finally block and catch block. There must be a try block. Then you can write the catch block and finally block. Without try block, so you are not allowed to write catch or right this finally block. You cannot write that. Okay. Now, what is catch block? So Java catch block is used to handle the exception by declaring the type of exception with a parameter. So suppose, so in the try block, you got an exception, then catch block will execute. You can write one try block, multiple catch blocks also. Suppose you are getting multiple exceptions. You want to handle all of them. Then one try block, catch block 1, catch block 2, catch block 3, like that. Each catch block, you can define how many catch blocks you want. That's a multi-catch block also, we call that. A try block can be followed by one or more multi-catch blocks. So each catch block must contain a different exception every time. So, but executes only one exception at a time, and so not all the exceptions at a time. Only one exception will occur. So at a time, only one exception occurs, and only one catch block is executed. All catch blocks must be ordered from most specific to most general. So general means last you have to keep exception class. Exception class also one generic class, not specific. Most general exception class is the exception class. Specific means, for example, you are getting arithmetic exception, you have to use a arithmetic exception class. If you are getting a null pointer exception, you have to use a null pointer exception class. So based on that type, you will use those exception classes. So any questions? And so I'll show you them. So let's move on to the finally block. So finally block is already we discussed yesterday. Final, finalize. Now we are discussing finally block. So finally block is used to execute any important code. So be like database connections closing and file streams. So any important code, not only this, I'm just example I'm giving database connection closing, file streams closing, all these purposes you want to write that code, always you want to execute that code, then you can go for the finally block. But you must have a try catch finally or try finally. So any one, you can write any format. So all try catch finally you can write, or try and then immediately can write a finally block also. So this finally block code always going to execute. Whether exception occurs or not, every time it will execute. That's a finally block. So finally block code. So if any important code you want to execute, you want to do some cleanup activities, as I mentioned, closing a files or a database connection closing, resources closing, all that if you want to do, you can use a finally block. So when finally block code doesn't execute, so there are few occasions, few scenarios, even finally block code also doesn't execute. Otherwise, finally block code always executes. So what are the reasons so it doesn't execute is, one is when the thread is dead. So your thread is killed. So the death of thread, then your finally block code doesn't execute. Or when you use system.exit method, that time also finally block code doesn't execute. So when there is an exception arises in the finally block, that time also finally block code doesn't execute. So here is the close method. Generally, we'll use close method with DB connections closing time or file streams closing time. This close method you will call on the resources. That's a finally block. When it won't execute, and why do you need to use a finally block? So to do a cleanup process, you will use a finally block, or any important code you want to execute, you will use a finally block. So there is a difference between finalize, and finally. That's a mandatory question in the interviews. Please make sure you understand them, all three. So there is a throw keyword. Java throw keyword is used to explicitly want to throw your custom exception message. Then you will use a throw keyword. So throw keyword is used within the method. Within the method inside, you will write a throw keyword. Then throw keyword syntax is throw new exception class, and you will write the error message. So what do you call this? Can anyone tell me what do you call this entire thing?
Object.
Right, you're right, absolutely. Object. Because a new class name. So this entire thing is an object. So that you want to throw your custom message for these classes, then you can use a throw keyword. And there is a throws keyword. A throws keyword is you want to declare a custom, your exception message, your exception you want to declare, not message, you want to declare. So there is exception is occurring, you want to declare it on the method signature line, then you will use a throws keyword. So compile time itself, you can declare your exception with the throws keyword. And why do you need, again, there is already, try catch is there, then why do you need throws? The reason is, so if, for example, multiple methods are throwing an exception, if you use a try catch, it's a lengthy code, right? And if you use a throws keyword in the method signature line itself, it will add with the class name. So this is like this. If you use this, see that try catch, very big one. And same thing if you use with throws. So in the method signature line itself, throws, arithmetic exception. See null pointer exception. See multiple exceptions you can declare. And then you can reduce the length of the code also. Only one method, it's fine. If multiple methods are there, and you cannot write every time this much lengthy one, right? So to make it very simplified code, and so short code, and this is the throws. Both throws to try catch will do the same. Both will do the exception handling one. So to handle those exceptions, either you can use a try catch block or a throws keyword also. throws keyword will reduce the length of your code, and so that's easy. So that's the reason throws. Throws is just declares your exceptions by declaring a throws and exception class name you can write. So that's the easy one. And and throw keyword is you can declare your custom messages. So you don't want a default messages. You want to write your custom messages. Then you can use this throw, and another one is throws keywords. Okay. So there are a few differences between throw and throws keyword. Java throw keyword is used explicitly to throw an exception message. Java throws keyword is used to declare an exception at a compile time. This is at runtime, and this one is at a compile time. So checked exceptions cannot be propagated using throw, and checked exception can be propagated through throws. Propagated means you are moving to next step. That's the propagating. Throw is followed by an instance. See, throw after you are writing an object, right? That's this point. Throws is followed by an exception class. Please remember that differences. Throw is used within the method. Throws is used with the method signature, method line, method parenthesis after you will write a throws, then followed by an exception class. But here, throw is written inside the method body. With a syntax, throw is followed by an object or an instance, we call that. You cannot throw multiple exceptions, but you can throw or you can declare multiple exceptions with the throws keyword like this. Throws, IO exception, SQL exception. So last one, we'll close it. What is the difference between final, finally, and finalize? So I already mentioned yesterday. Let me give you one more time. Final is a non-access modifier keyword, so which can be applied on class, method, and variable. Final class cannot be inherited. Final method cannot be overridden. Final variable value cannot be changed. So final is just a keyword, non-access modifier keyword. Finally is a block. So in the exception handling, that's what this point. And finally is used to execute any important code, or you want to do some cleanup activity, then you will use a finally block. And finalize is a method in the object class, which is used to perform cleanup processing just before object is garbage collected. That's all the differences between finally, final, and finalize. Okay, so please read this example, and this are very important in the interview point of view. And also they will ask you, give some code, and they will ask you, okay, so which block code will execute when? So that you need to identify try block or catch block. So finally block when it will execute, they will ask. Yeah. So that's all for today. And we'll see tomorrow with the programs.